You're listening to Morning Coffee Thoughts. Today's piece is called The Rotting Sibuyas and the Unresolved Agricultural Problem. Let's get into it. On the road to Dinggalan last Sunday, we were on a family trip for a relaxing break beside a river. Along the way, I lost count of the roadside vendors selling onions, hundreds of them it felt like. Sack after sack lined up under the heat. That part wasn't unusual. It's harvest season here in Nueva Ecija, and vendors along the road are a familiar sight. What caught my attention was the price written on the handmade signs. 50 to 200 pesos. Think about that for a moment. A full sack of onions. Weeks of planting, watering, praying the weather holds, the pests don't come, the prices don't crash, and someone is asking you to take it for less than the cost of a decent lunch in Manila. Those vendors lining the road aren't a scenic detail of provincial life. Each one of them is a hand frantically waving above the water. They are drowning in losses, and they are asking, in the only way they know how, for someone to stop and help. This is the symptom of a problem that has been hounding our farmers for years. Senator Kiko Pangilinan is in Muñoz, asking hard questions. But one Senate hearing doesn't fix a structure that has been failing farmers since before most of his colleagues cared to notice. The numbers that make you sick. In January 2026, the farm gate price of red onions in Nueva Ecija and Occidental Mindoro was between 120 and 150 pesos per kilo. By February, it had collapsed to around 30 to 40 pesos. That's a crash of more than 70% in under 2 months. The break-even cost of farming a kilo of red onions in Nueva Ecija is estimated at 40 to 50 pesos. So farmers were already selling below cost or barely breaking even, while retailers in Metro Manila were still charging much higher prices to consumers. Someone is making money, just not the farmer. In Occidental Mindoro, red onion prices dropped to around 23 pesos per kilo at the lowest point. Farmer leader Gemma Mateo Tabial, representing roughly 5,000 onion farmers there, said it plainly: "We are truly suffering." Farmers in Pangasinan told reporters they were still hopeful in February, when prices hovered around 50 to 55 pesos per kilo. Within weeks, red onion prices crashed to 38 to 43 pesos, and buyers simply disappeared. One of the structural problems at the core of this crisis is cold storage. Farmers who don't have access to storage facilities are at the mercy of whoever will buy their onions right now, at whatever price that buyer wants to offer. Here's how the machine works. Traders lend money to farmers for capital. Because of that utang, the farmer has almost no leverage. When harvest comes, the trader sets the price, and the farmer takes it or leaves it. The trader then stores the onions in cold storage they control, waiting for the right market moment to release stocks at a better price. A CIARCA, Southeast Asian Regional Center for Graduate Study and Research in Agriculture, study estimated post-harvest losses from the lack of adequate cold storage at up to 6 billion pesos for onions. Along the fresh onion chain, from Bangaban to Divisoria alone, losses were pegged at 45.06%. 45%, nearly half of what farmers grow, never reaches the consumer in good condition. In 2026, Senator Lauren Legarda cited data showing cold storage saturation had reached 82%. That means most facilities were already full. Farmers without secured storage space had no choice: sell immediately at ruinous prices or let the Sibuyas rot. During a Senate hearing held in Science City of Muñoz, Nueva Ecija, on March 26, 2026, Senator Francis Kiko Pangilinan asked the question directly: have traders formed a cartel, and are they coordinating among themselves? Senators also flagged inconsistencies between DA data and Philippine Statistics Authority numbers, which may have led to import decisions that worsened the oversupply. This is the part that makes everything feel rigged. The DA had earlier said onion imports would be halted to protect local producers, but Bureau of Plant Industry records showed that sanitary and phytosanitary import clearances were still valid until February 15, 2026. Around 4,000 metric tons of imported onions were allowed to arrive right during the peak of the local harvest. They flooded the market with imported onions, even though there were already too many local onions. The result was predictable. Farmgate prices crashed in major producing provinces, while retail prices in urban markets did not fall at the same rate. Trader importers with cold storage and import access benefited from both import timing and the price spread. Jason Kanglet of Sinag pointed out that production forecasts are usually available by mid-year, yet imports still get approved close to or during harvest season. This simultaneous importation with the harvest creates an artificial oversupply, resulting in reduced farm gate prices, he said. On top of the legal imports, the Bureau of Customs intercepted a single shipment of smuggled Chinese onions worth 153 million pesos at the Manila International Container Port in January 2023, and that was just one operation. The Bureau of Customs' total haul of smuggled onions for 2022 alone reportedly reached around 600 million pesos. These shadow stocks don't appear in official BPI tallies, but still depress prices, undercutting local farmers further. In 2000, around 700 farmers in San Jose City, Nueva Ecija, reportedly let their harvest rot because buyers were offering 2 to 3 pesos per kilo. Imagine putting in months of work and getting less than pamasahe per kilo in return. In March 2022, onions were again piling up along the roads in Dinggalan. The farm gate price had fallen to about 30 pesos per kilo. Some farmers were filmed dumping their onions because traders would not buy at a fair price. Then, by late 2022 and into 2023, the pendulum swung wildly in the other direction. Retail prices for onions in Metro Manila reached as high as 720 pesos per kilo amid a severe shortage. The Bureau of Customs seized multiple shipments of smuggled onions that year, totaling hundreds of millions of pesos, and public attention shifted to cartels, hoarding, and alleged manipulation. Same crop, same farmers. Different year, different end of the same abusive cycle. Victor Layug, a longtime onion farmer from Dinggalan who has been planting since the 1980s, put human detail into that pattern. He recalled that fertilizer used to cost around 200 pesos. Now, it's in the 2,000 plus pesos range. Seed cans that used to be 2,000 pesos have climbed to around 7,500 pesos. To fully develop a hectare of onions, farmers now need about 300,000 to 400,000 pesos in capital. Kung minsan nangungutang, kung minsan nagtitira ng sadyang pampuhunan namin. You can hear the exhaustion in that sentence. Layug said if a farmer loses twice in a row, the first to go is the carabao, another losing cycle, and the land gets mortgaged. That's how agricultural policy feels on the ground, less like a system and more like a slow eviction. To be fair, there have been real government projects that matter to onion farmers. In 2022, the DA turned over 2 cold storage facilities in Palayan City, Nueva Ecija, worth about 17.49 million pesos and 40 million pesos respectively. In 2023, additional units were opened in Laneda and San Jose, each with a capacity of 20,000 bags and intended to serve small farmers. Under the Philippine Rural Development Project, some facilities were set up with terms meant to favor farmer cooperatives, waiving reservation fees to make access less exclusive. These things help, especially when the facility is genuinely run with smallholders in mind. But the messaging from the top often cuts the other way. In February 2026, Agriculture Secretary Francisco Tiu Laurel said onion farmers should be happy with a farm gate price of 40 to 45 pesos per kilo, the same range that the DA's own estimates put as break-even cost for Nueva Ecija farmers. Happy San, at break-even, with hundreds of thousands in capital on the line, utang to traders, and no guarantee that buyers will show up at all? On March 26, 2026, President Marcos Jr. visited a new onion cold storage and palay warehouse in Ramon Isabela. Whether this becomes a turning point or just another photo op depends on what happens with access rules, fees, and who actually controls the facility once the cameras leave. The market is set up so that the person who takes almost all the risk gets the least share of the reward. The farmer plants, the farmer borrows, the farmer bets against weather, pests, global prices, and the government's import calendar. Then, at harvest, they sell at whatever the trader dictates, because the trader holds 2 choke points, the capital and the cold storage. Nueva Ecija alone accounts for more than half of the country's onion production in many years. In the first half of 2024, national production projections reached over 370,000 metric tons, well above the country's estimated full-year domestic requirement of 270,000 to 300,000 metric tons. Record output. Farmers still drowning in debt. Lagarde's resolution calls for several key reforms: direct government procurement at a support price, a standing ban on imports every December to prevent harvest season flooding, and more cold storage that is truly farmer-managed, not trader-controlled. Agriculture groups like CNAG and Amihan have been saying similar things for years: tighten control over imports, stop approving SPSICs that overlap with peak harvest, and break the concentration of power among a small cluster of trader importers. Chaos at the farm level is not an accident. The volatility, 1 year of oversupply and crashing prices, another year of shortages and crazy high retail, is exactly what benefits those who can time the market and control storage. When the government knows that every March, prices will crash if there's no storage and if imports overlap with harvest, and this pattern has shown up in 2000, 2016, 2022, and now 2026. Eventually, you cross a line where this stops looking like simple incompetence. At some point, you have to ask, sino ang consistent na panalo sa ganitong setup? It's not the farmer in Bangabon who sells below break-even while watching news reports about market forces. It's not the consumer in Manila who pays triple the farm gate price during shortages. The winners are the traders who control cold storage, the importers who secure SPSICs at the perfect time, and the people who sit in the overlap of those roles. The Sibuyas will rot again next year if the structure stays the same. The cold storage facilities can keep getting built, and that's good. But if access is quietly captured through high reservation fees, informal gatekeeping in cooperatives, or backroom deals that let big traders dominate booking slots, then the same story will play on loop. Hopeful planting season, panicked harvest, quiet foreclosure. I'm talking to you directly now. If you run a restaurant, a carinderia, a catering business, a food stall, if you cook onions in anything, which means almost everyone, please consider buying directly from Nueva Ecija. It takes time to travel. Yes, the supply chain to Divisoria feels easier. But those vendors I passed on the road to Dinggalan, they are right there. They have sacks of fresh onions sitting in the heat for 100 to 200 pesos each, waiting for someone to stop. There are sellers just outside my own subdivision in Cabanatuan. Real farmers, not middlemen. If you need a contact, I am willing to connect you directly. Send me a message. I will find you a seller. This isn't charity. You get fresh, locally grown Sibuyas at a price that would make your food cost accountant happy. The farmer gets a buyer who sees them as a supplier, not someone to squeeze. That's a transaction worth making. You don't have to fix the policy. You don't have to wait for the Senate hearing to produce results. One restaurant buying one sack directly from one farmer in Nueva Ecija is a small thing. But those vendors on the roadside aren't waiting for a systemic fix. They are waiting for a buyer today. The harder question is, bakit palagi na lang ganito? The answer starts with who decides to stop the next time they drive past a roadside vendor with a sack and a handwritten price. Thank you for listening to Morning Coffee Thoughts.